Well, hello, I'm here with Doug, and today I'm going to talk about stupid Nazis. And it's Friday, May 23rd, 2025.
And Sam, I'm going to talk about milkshakes.
Well, good. If I was thinking, when I was writing this up, I had like 15 stories about politics and only two about information security. And I said, it's good that people don't pay for this. Because if they want me to be on topic, they'll have to listen to some other podcast. So, but
All right, so what do you got going?
well, there was just a ridiculous amount of politics, although probably the top story is the one that just happened yesterday, which is that the Trump administration has now declared that Harvard cannot enroll international students at all, which means all the international students that are currently there finishing a degree have to transfer to a different college or get deported. They don't even get to finish their program.
Wait. Why would they get, how do, explain, please.
Well, Trump, there are a couple of objections. I mean, the reason they're doing it is because Harvard refused to just play ball. I mean, what Trump demanded, the usual stuff he's demanding from every college, you must cooperate with ICE, letting us go into the dormitories and arrest your students. You must end all DEI policies. You must crush all student protests against Israel and like help us deport anybody that would dare to support Palestine and stuff like that. That's what they're demanding from every college. And the other colleges, they demand that you must just put the government in charge of your woke departments like Middle East history. So we'll decide what you're allowed to teach.
So, but isn't Harvard private?
Yes, and they have an endowment, which is huge. So, but he said you want to cut all federal funding unless you do all this stuff, which is what he did before. But that wasn't enough because Harvard said, well, to hell with it. We'll go without the federal funding. And so now they're saying they're going to remove your permission to have any international students at all immediately.
Oh, and I guess that's how the federal government gets involved because we're international students.
Yeah, so apparently they have to issue a
Okay.
visa for you to go to school. And he's
Yeah.
there was an announcement earlier today without any details that Harvard intends to sue. I imagine that Trump does not actually have the power to do this. He hasn't had the power to do essentially anything he's done so far. And all these executive orders, they're all going to get overturned in the courts, but that takes like a year or two.
Right.
So he gets to
Right.
do a lot of this stuff in the meantime, and certainly he'll be able to do a lot of damage to Harvard. But of course, the point, like all these, is to strike fear in academia and immigrants and
Yeah.
international students. And
Yeah.
they've already say tourism is way down, flights are empty coming into America. People are canceling vacations. International students are going elsewhere. And China has announced we will welcome all these international students to go there. I mean, he's basically dethroning the United States from all international participation in everything good. Our only friends in the world are going to be El Salvador and Russia. And, this is very, very much like Brexit, you know, where
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
withdraw from the international union that was doing you a lot of good. And then you wonder, gee, why are we broke now? It's a massive act of self-destruction on the part of the U.S., and these students are just innocent victims like all the other immigrants. And now I just heard yesterday that they had researched and found that 50 of the immigrants that he already sent to that El Salvador prison camp are in fact legal citizens. They were not illegal immigrants at all. They came in legally, but Trump just sweeps them up and sent them there regardless.
So out of how many?
280 or so.
So
And by the way, they only have information about like 120 of them. The rest have no files. The ones that have files, almost half of them were in fact here legally.
I see.
And
I see.
90% of them have no criminal record at all. There is no evidence whatever that they're actually in a gang, which was the excuse for deporting them all. That's why I mean that's why there's all the courts, including the Supreme Court, have said you can't ignore habeas corpus like this. You have to actually have a trial or a hearing where a
Yeah.
person gets a chance to defend themselves. These people could have proven that they're here legally, or perhaps that they're really citizens. But you just arrest them and disappear them without proving anything. That's really outrageous. And that means they could grab any of us and disappear us, and you never get a chance to like protest and say, wait, even if you have a good reason. So they just like by the way, this is what the previous Nazis did in the 30s. They said people will say you shouldn't compare Trump to the Nazis. They say you absolutely should. He's doing exactly the same thing. The Jews were legal citizens and he just revoked their citizenship and said, there, now you're illegal. Now I'm throwing you out. And that's exactly what they did with these people. They were here legally and they just yanked the rug out from under them. No, you're not. I remember before he got elected, they asked J.D. Vance about that because he was talking about the immigrants in that Ohio town where he said they were eating the dogs and eating the cats.
Right.
And they said,
Yeah.
wait, those people are here legally and you can't deport them. And J.D. Vance said, well, we don't agree with the law they used to bring them in, so they're illegal. And that shows a Trumpian concept of the law. The law is whatever I say it is. And that's what Trump said. He said he is the supreme law enforcement officer of America, and whatever he says, that's the law.
Hmm.
This is what tyrants have said down through history. I'm the king, off with his head. I don't need to go through a court or Congress or anything.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting, the legal aspect of this.
Yeah.
Um,
And what
that
main thing I
yeah,
need, main thing, most important thing to me is the lesson from the 40s, which is that the courts will not save us.
right.
Because Roy Cohn's techniques are good enough. You can get away with anything if you just snarl it up in court, make an exception, make an appeal, drag it out, threaten the judge, move to a friendly judge. You can pretty much get away with anything for like decades by just snarling it up in the courts.
Yeah, well, that's what um, the billionaires have done,
Yeah,
and the Koch brothers did that.
yeah.
So remember the Koch brothers? It's a private firm. I can't remember Koch Industries.
It's two brothers. One of them died now, but I think they got in, I think, oil. So they're
Yeah,
incredibly
yeah,
rich. And they push, of course, all the right-wing policies that benefit the rich.
yeah,
What else
yeah,
would they do?
yeah. And so there was a trial that was going on where a wife was suing on behalf of her dead husband that worked for Koch Industries. And his job was, I think, cleaning out crude oil tanks, and he'd have to climb inside. And
Yeah,
he died a pretty painful death of cancer.
right.
And it was clearly related to benzene, or not clearly, but the link is there between benzene. I forgot kind of the details,
So this
but
is just like the chimney sweeps, which was the first
yes,
case of people getting. That's when they discovered carcinogens. That
yeah,
constantly being exposed to the soot in chimneys, in fact, gives you cancer.
correct. Yeah, yeah, that was in England
Yeah,
where that started. So anyway, he was in the tanks and he died, and his wife was just so angry. And the Koch brothers refused to pay the widow's retirement fund or whatever it was.
yeah.
And so she doubly sued. And the evidence was presented, and one of the Koch brothers was in the court just fighting it adamantly. And then the evidence was there, and he kind of walked out of the courtroom, told his attorneys to settle with her. But this what I'm getting at is they're fighting this, um, where people have died as a result of the jobs that they had. They didn't have the personal protection equipment that they needed.
Sure, same thing at Tesla. A whole bunch of people got hurt in the Tesla factories. They have a really high error rate and they sue a lot. And he's always like pushing back. Well, he tried to make everybody work through COVID and get caught.
Yeah, right.
He's,
Yeah,
he's,
that's another example. Right,
yeah, he's
right,
the same.
right.
He'd just like to be, just like Trump says, he wishes it was 1890 and he was just running a workhouse and like, Bob, like the guy in A Christmas Story with the kid that made the guy work on Christmas. He just like
Yeah,
that guy with
yeah,
the whip making being a slave driver.
yeah, yeah,
So there's a ton more of this stuff. RFK Jr. Um, called the World Health Organization moribund, and the U.S. yanked all its funding. So China has stepped in with $500 million to fund the World Health Organization. So we're just walking out of the leadership role in the world, and China is just walking in to take over. Um,
yeah. Interesting, huh?
and
Well, let me tell you about milkshakes, Sam.
oh yeah,
All right. So here's the deal. The NIH recently released a study on that questions the theory about ultra processed foods and
oh
brain response. Have you heard about this?
no, but I've heard the ultra processed foods is RFK Jr.'s big thing. He's blaming everything on that and seed oils. That's his
Uh,
belief. That's what causes all the harm.
Yeah, well, Sam, you're kind of giving away the punchline of the story here.
Yeah.
But let me continue. So, a well-known nutritionist at the NIH did a PET scan study where he would give adults PET scan before, give them a vanilla milkshake, and then find out what the dopamine response and what was going on in the brain.
Now, the PET scans I know measure glucose processing in the cells. I guess there one that measures dopamine in the brain.
That's that's according to the NIH.
I would think the blood-brain barrier would prevent that. Okay, I'd like to know more about how that happens.
Yeah. So anyway, it was published in Cell Metabolism Journal.
Yeah.
And what the finding was, no, there's no relation between ultra processed food, high caloric or high sugar content food and yeah, I mean, in brain and dopamine response.
By the way, ultra
Okay.
processed is not really well defined, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but I
would
guess
agree with
I
that.
guess I'm thinking of things like Pop Tarts and just things that involve a lot of refined sugar and are very far from like a natural plant or something. I guess that's the idea.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's yeah, it gets tricky.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it's what's a synthetic chemical? It's a
it's like
man-made one.
it's like organic food. That's also not
Yeah,
well defined. Yeah,
yeah, organic food is loosely defined too.
yeah,
Okay, so anyway, they did the study and NIH had it was getting ready to release it. I'm not sure if it got released, but I guess it got published. And then the person at the NIH was told you can't release the story.
yeah.
And so what happened is the person quit, and now reporters and people have been going to the NIH,
Yeah.
and now the story has changed. And RFK Jr. has cited it, saying that this study conclusively shows that sugar is addictive and it's addictive as cocaine.
Oh, for God's sake.
So that's the official now story, from what I understand.
Yeah, this is just like Trump and his white genocide. And like so many other things, they just take a conspiracy theory and now they put the full credibility of the US government behind it. So they're turning us into North Korea as fast as they can, where you just can't believe anything the government says.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, this is one of the clearest examples where they've changed it,
Yeah.
changed the outcome of a scientific study.
Yep.
And I would assume NIH, is it fair to say that they do credible studies?
They used to. Yes.
Yeah, they used to. Well, they still probably do credible studies. The results
Are then
are
modified.
modified.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And they fire you if you complain. That's right. So,
yeah,
um,
yeah. Or they force you out and quit. Yeah,
yeah,
one.
yeah. So this is that's the next one here. The CDC is not warning people like it used to. In fact, they've quit sending out all the newsletters. They used to have frequent updates about
Yeah,
the spread of disease and what you should do, and they blocked all that because it has to pass through the Soviet style political orthodoxy coordination first. Does this match our political message? And of course, it doesn't match RFK Jr.'s message. He said before he got in that he wanted to end all medical work on communicable diseases and focus only on chronic diseases. Because that's his whole theory. Just like Joe Rogan, he thinks if you like eat raw meat and work out, then you don't need any vaccines anymore because your strong body will fight off all the infections. So we should really just focus on diet and exercise and not bother doing anything about communicable disease, which is, a childish, cartoonishly simple concept of health. By the way, he's not wrong that improving the American diet would be a good thing, but
yeah. But
you don't
we're not
abandon.
improving it in the correct way.
I know, but yeah, and you don't abandon treatment for stuff like COVID and tuberculosis while you're improving the diet.
Yeah.
There are communicable diseases that are important in addition to chronic diseases. You should do both.
So this is getting ridiculous. Oh, and I should say, this is kind of tricky with the milkshake one. RFK Jr. claims that sugar is a toxin and is a poison, and that our bodies don't need it. Now, think about that one for a second.
Well, you don't need to eat refined sugar. Now you can eat carbohydrates and you create sugar out of it, right? So I mean, there's some degree of sugar in your metabolism. Now you could argue that you probably shouldn't eat refined sugar, and that might be reasonably true. I think it causes more tooth decay. It's I mean, you could argue that.
Well, wait, but you're right. But now we're removing fluoride from drinking water.
Well, yeah, that's just because of their general conspiracy theory nonsense. Um,
Yeah, and RFK Jr. claims that fluoride is a
it makes you stupid.
well, it's a byproduct of production. It's a waste product.
Well, that's what I heard. It actually is an industrial waste product, but it turned out to have a health benefit at a reasonable dose. And there was apparently at a really high dose, it lowers IQ. So that's why he thinks it's making our kids stupid, but not at the dose they're getting.
Yeah, but I think that study on reducing IQ was done about 100 years ago,
Yeah, I think there's
and
not even be wrong. Yeah.
yeah, there's not a lot of supporting or corroborating evidence to
But
go
in
along with
general,
it.
a huge excess of anything is probably bad for you. That's probably true.
Yeah. But to be fair about this, I'll kind of defend RFK Jr. There's a doctor at UCSF Med Center. It's Dr. Lesdick, and for 30 years he studied childhood obesity,
Mhm.
and he's tied that back to the high intake of sugar
And
in
that seems
terms of
quite
soft
reasonable.
drinks.
Sure, that seems quite reasonable.
Right, right. And these are very high doses. He lobbied to get some laws passed. I think Berkeley, San Francisco may or may not passed it, but it's a tax
Well,
on soft drinks
I think that I thought they had that for years. Of course, I don't know. I quit drinking that stuff a long time ago, but I thought they passed that tax years ago.
in San Francisco.
I think so, but I wasn't paying a lot of
Yeah,
attention. They
I,
sure talked about it.
yeah, yeah. So they talked about it. So it's kind of like the cigarette tax.
And just the
It's
same, and
right.
probably justified by the same logic that if less people drink soft drinks, that would be better for them.
Yeah. So if you listen to Dr. Lesdick, how many sugar molecules are there out there?
I don't know.
I don't know, hundreds. Is
The ones
that?
you hear about are fructose and glucose, but there are a bunch of others.
Yeah. And our bodies need glucose to operate.
They create it from the carbs you eat. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's not clear that you actually have to eat glucose directly, but
No, no. Yeah. But if you get an IV, you get a glucose IV.
sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because your
Because
body will. Yeah.
our bodies need glucose.
Oh, you
It's
need
an
a certain
energy
blood
source.
sugar level. This is the thing with diabetics. If a blood sugar level goes too
Yes.
low, you pass out. If it goes too high, it's bad for you. You have to keep it at a certain level.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I get that. So Dr. Lustig, who's studied childhood obesity, this is kind of interesting. He said, in my 30 years, if we study fetuses, we're finding fatty liver disease, which means that the mother is taking an excess of sugar and the liver stores that as fat. It converts it to fat and stores it. And he said, never before would we see fetuses
Hmm.
in other words, that didn't make it through to childbirth with this fatty liver disease. He said that's the disease of an older person.
I thought
Somebody
alcohol had something to do with fatty liver disease too.
that too. Yeah, that's
So
also it's the
it
same
might suggest the
sugar.
mother's been drinking anyway.
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
could. Okay. But his point is that, he's working with these kids for 30 years,
yeah,
and it all comes back to high fructose corn syrup. And there is sort of an addictive element to it.
sure.
So RFK Jr. is right, sort of, if he goes along with Lestic, but he needs to clarify it because it's not all sugar.
Well,
It's one specific type.
well, if you want to agree with RFK Jr., I have something to agree with. He said in
Okay.
his latest congressional testimony, he said, "Well, people really shouldn't listen to me for medical advice." Now, I agree with that.
I'll agree with that too.
That's kind of a funny thing for the head of HHS to say.
So
But the fact is, he doesn't have a medical degree. He's completely full of shit. He has no idea what he's saying, and no one should listen to him. I can get on board with that.
and his career is based on suing, right, over vaccines containing mercury.
And in his early years, it was
Yeah.
about blocking water pollution, which is actually something I can agree with. That's why,
Huh.
he was originally an anti-pollution guy, environmental, and that's why he had some real Democratic credentials. But then he went off into this crazy conspiracy theory medical crap.
So I wonder what the cash incentive was there for him to
Well,
defect.
Like I say, I think you're right. I think he belongs to some group that makes all its money by suing people, and he probably tells himself he's doing good, like Ralph Nader. It's easy to the right wing, echo chamber convinces you you're right and heroic and saving the world. Like I think Trump actually thinks he's saving America by getting rid of all the immigrants because they're all like rapists and murderers and stuff. I'm sure he feels like he's doing a good thing.
Yeah. So I do know that he makes a $500,000 or more a year,
Yeah.
and it's from a nonprofit that he set up or that he's funded.
Yep.
And it's all about anti-vaxxing and
Yeah.
things along those lines.
Yeah. This is a medical quackery has been a really good racket for back to the dawn of time.
Oh, of course.
I just saw ads for people that are searching for the fountain of youth. So this goes all the way back. Medical quackery is a winner all the way back.
All right.
Yeah.
So what else you got there
Let's
going?
see.
So Sam, do you
Yeah.
know that they've kind of cut funding for COVID research to a
Yeah, worse
degree?
than worse than that. They've
Right,
changed the rules. So you have to
right.
go through all the placebo trials for each version of the vaccine. So that's going to end the COVID vaccine. But now they say they're only going to allow people to take it if they're in the high risk category, like over 65. And even if you are like a caretaker for somebody over 65, they won't let you have the vaccine. So this is really
And
bad. Yeah.
and if you do any research on this, you're
Yeah.
banned for government funding for 5 years.
Yeah. It's appalling as we like
Yeah.
throw away public health and education, the strong suits, and research. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm kind of bringing into another story. There's
Yeah.
a woman, let's see, Diana Cohen, I think. Do you know who she is? The physics girl is her
Nope.
YouTube channel.
I
She
might have seen that.
graduated,
Yeah.
yeah, so she graduated from, I believe it was MIT, and 2.5 years ago, she was struck with long COVID. And she has been bedridden, and I
Oh, yeah.
mean bedridden
Yeah.
for at least 2 years, and she's finally kind of getting a little bit better. She's finally up and around, but she's still not herself and not close to being herself.
Yeah.
And she just posted, or somebody posted, a YouTube video that's called "How's Diana Doing?" So, and sadly, she got married, I think a month or 2 months before she became ill with long COVID.
Yeah.
So this is really something,
Yeah.
or else she's a great actress.
No, but this reminds me of like 20 years ago, it was chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, similar diseases. And people tried to tell these women for like years that they were just making it up.
Yeah,
They eventually
yeah,
found out this is a real disease. It's real hard to treat. It really does ruin your life.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, what else you got
Yeah.
here?
Well, I got a couple of good things actually. This
Okay.
one is kind of unbelievable. In fact, I ignored it at first, thinking it's got to be a lie, but it's on serious science courses. They found a cholesterol treatment that cuts your levels of bad cholesterol by 69% after one dose permanently. Because
What?
what it does is it let's see, it's like taking as much good as taking statins all the time. But what it does is it changes, okay, it provides a one-time fix by switching off a specific gene called PCSK9 in the liver. This gene plays a key role in regulating how much LDL cholesterol the liver can detect and remove from the bloodstream. So by switching off a gene, they make a permanent adjustment so you have less of that bad cholesterol. So it sounds bloody awesome.
Well, wait a second, Sam.
Yeah.
So this is a one. Is it a shot?
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Then they give you one shot and it turns off a tiny fraction of DNA, which changes the cholesterol level of your blood and is permanent. And exactly how it does that, I'm not sure. I don't know if it's actually modifying your DNA with like viruses. I don't think so.
Well, you can't modify the DNA.
Well, you can actually. People do, but there's that's gene therapy. There's a few examples of it being done with like CRISPR and viruses and stuff, but it's very new, and that's not what this is.
Yeah,
This was
yeah.
human participants, 14 participants with familial hypercholesterolemia, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they found it worked very well. I've heard of these people. People they have really high cholesterol. Their blood is like honey. They die young, of course, and it really helped those people.
Hmm.
All participants responded well, no serious side effects. and they got serious cholesterol lowering. So that's a good, cheerful thing. And it's already up to
So
human trials.
yeah, so is it modifying the genome? No.
They say it's preventing that gene from expressing itself somehow. I'd like to know how that works at a chemical level. I agree. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, because
I don't quite
normally
understand
what
how could it be permanent. That I don't get.
yeah, because you'd have something that would either bind to it or maybe it could cleave the
Yeah,
DNA at that spot.
yeah, it's got to be doing something like that. And
Yeah.
there isn't enough detail here for me to
Yeah,
say
okay,
what.
okay.
But
So it's kind of like getting your tubes tied.
yeah, yeah,
It
permanent
could
change.
sever the DNA
Yeah,
permanently.
yeah, apparently.
Yeah, yeah,
And
okay.
and there's another one that I thought was an interesting medical study. An OnlyFans model decided to have sex with 583 men in 6 hours. And, well, amazingly enough, this is bad for you. She said she's having a lot of bleeding and this is not a good idea. So, anybody planning on doing that, don't. And this made me think of like William Proxmire that used to make fun of scientific studies that study something blatantly obvious that isn't even worth studying. Like, well, yeah, why would you do that? That sounds like a really bad idea.
So give me the answer. Give me the numbers again. 583 in 6 hours.
Yeah, so that I worked that's out to 2 per minute. Which
Two.
seems quite impractical as well as being an extraordinarily bad idea. So anyway, that's sort of an athletic feat. And
I, I
otherwise
would
athletic.
I would have to ask
Yeah.
who would do
She found 10,000 men that wanted to do it.
and you get 30 seconds?
I guess. And there's a woman before this that I checked with like 100 men in a night, and they showed her. She went to like Heathrow in London and just held up a sign saying, "You can fuck me. Sign up here." And just got lots of men that signed up. But you have to be filmed on video doing it. And it was the same deal here. She had conditions, and the question
All
is
right.
why? I guess this is a way to make money on OnlyFans. I guess it's a way to like get attention. Anyway,
Oh, so I get it. It's a 6 hour video.
apparently something like that. Um, anyway,
All right, Sam. Sorry, I don't get it, but please continue.
well, yeah,
Next story.
I wouldn't have signed up. I wouldn't have joined in.
So
Anyway,
I guess on the male side,
yeah,
you have 30 seconds and that's it because you don't have to complete the task.
I don't really know.
We don't know the
I
details
guess you'd have to join OnlyFans and
to find
watch
out.
the video to find out the details. I'm not planning on doing that.
So, Sam, it would be kind of interesting to see what the score is of how many completed versus not.
I guess.
All right, that goes back to who was it? The Masters and Johnson study back
Well,
in the
yeah,
40s.
that was interesting. And I've also heard I heard a gay guy tell his coming out story on a podcast or something, and he has the Kinsey scale, like from 1 to 5.
Yeah,
And he talked about that. And that turned out to be useful too. Like he said, people didn't know. I didn't want to admit to myself that I was gay, but I'm all the way over at 5, 100% gay. Like in high school, I'd be hanging around the guys and they'd look at this girl and say, wow, look at that girl. And he'd look, what? What am I looking at? I don't see anything.
yeah,
Why is that interesting? He said, I
yeah.
eventually had to admit I'm like 100% gay. Anyway.
Sam, I'll tell you, there's a woman that went through the hormone treatment to
Hmm.
convert to a guy.
Hmm.
And she said, growing up, and granted, this is one data point,
Yeah.
but it's kind of interesting because she said, I guess he said, but when she was a woman, that she hated it, the guys would look at her and check her out,
Ah,
so to speak. So she said, I began the hormone treatment, and after about a year, when a woman was walking down the street, I just had to look.
well, that's true. I mean, we're only here because our ancestors had this sex drive.
Yeah,
The people that
yeah,
didn't have this really strong sex drive, they're gone.
correct. Yes, yes,
That's Darwin for you.
yeah.
Yep. I know, and it's a strange thing. You think you're in charge. This is what Buddhists tell you is true of almost everything. You think you're in charge, but you're really just making excuses as instinct drags you along. Yeah. So,
Yeah. All right. What else you got going here?
well, let's see. This stuff isn't that exciting. Trump is actually saying he's going to build the Golden Dome, which is the imitation of Israel's Iron Dome, and it's the same thing Reagan wanted to do, Star Wars. He wants to have a missile defense system, but scientists say it's completely impossible. They say it would take 36,000 satellites with nuclear warheads in orbit to do this. And so anyway, but he's talking about like he's really going to do it. Of course, he also talks like he's going to invade Canada and but Greenland and Panama and a bunch of other countries. So I don't think any of this stuff is going to happen. But anyway,
Sam, after World War II, this is sort of interesting story. Albania was afraid. Albania is above Greece, below Croatia, Montenegro, and I guess the president. I'm not sure what the leader of the country was, but he was convinced. This was after World War II in 1960s that Russia was going to invade, and they would use tanks and come down this valley. So he, and I'm not exactly sure what the valley is, but as a result of that, he decided to protect everybody in Albania from this invasion because by the end of World War II, when we get into the 1960s, nobody would use airplanes now, would they? They'd still use tanks from World War II.
well, I don't
I'm
know.
making a joke
I
there.
know, but I mean, there might be a reason why they wouldn't use airplanes. It depends on the situation,
Okay. So anyway, he built these little pill boxes
like the
that would,
Maginot Line.
well, but it lined a valley that's
Yeah.
internal to Albania.
Okay.
So he had 10, 20,000 of these pill boxes where one, two, three people could fit. They
This
had
is
a door.
this
Oh,
is the video game Tower Defense. This is exactly how it works. Go ahead.
is it really?
Oh, I see it all the time. You build these things, and these soldiers are marching. You're trying to shoot them all as they come in. Yeah.
But these are tanks.
Yep. That's tower defense. They're tanks, and you're shooting
Okay.
with something.
So
Yeah.
anyway, he literally bankrupted the country
Ah.
by building these.
Ah.
And these mushrooms still exist today.
Yeah.
And people use them for chicken coops and people go make out in them or they use them for storage.
Yeah.
But they're still dotted the hillside. And I've talked to a couple people who are Albanian and they're still angry at their president for doing this.
Well, there
So
was
they're
an Albanian massacre, Albanian genocide at one time, right? I'm not sure exactly how it worked, but I've heard of that. Somebody did invade and kill a lot of them.
when was that was 100 years ago,
I'm not
give or
sure.
take.
I'm not sure.
And you're not talking about the Armenian
Oh, I
genocide.
am. I think of the
Oh,
Armenian genocide.
okay.
You're right. I'm
Yeah.
real vague on geography. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, I
Okay.
guess I don't know
Okay.
anything about Albania at all.
Um,
And I guess the
anyway,
invasion did not happen, and these pillboxers didn't benefit him, right?
yeah. And, the funny part about this is if, if Russia was going to invade, that's not how they would do it.
Yeah,
From a military point of view.
yeah. Well, from risk analysis, which is the thing I really do,
Yeah.
you consider even if these things were effective, well, then that would cause the enemy to try another attack. So you have to plan for, you can't put all your defenses in just one place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here he put let's see. I'm reading this. There's an average of roughly about 6 bunkers for every square kilometer.
Yeah. Well, that it reminds me a lot of the French Maginot Line, essentially the same idea.
Yeah. So it was yeah, oh, I didn't know this. It was from the 1960s to the 1980s, and
Yeah.
they built a quarter of a million or three-quarters of a million of them.
Well, I think you're quite correct to compare that to Trump's Golden Dome. We could spend trillions of dollars building this piece of junk that is not going to save us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, I do have a couple of InfoSec
All
stories
right.
that are pretty lame, which is so Microsoft Recall is rolling out in Windows 11. So Signal wants to guarantee that Signal chats will not be captured by Microsoft Recall. and put in there, and they tried to put it in. And they tell you Microsoft does not provide an API for this purpose. You cannot design an app that refuses to be archived by Signal. But what you can do is you can turn on DRM and claim that your app is copyrighted material and therefore not legal. That's how they did it. Yeah, that's the only facility Microsoft provides to exclude yourself from Microsoft recall. So that's what they did.
Okay.
Your Signal chats will not get captured by Microsoft recall. And CompTIA has now added a new SEC OT Plus certification for securing operational technology, which is critical infrastructure. And I've been teaching this for a few years. I'm sort of interested to see that. So there's,
So is it, Sam, do you consider OT, is that SCADA
yeah,
controlled
yeah,
devices?
SCADA and protocols like Modbus and DNP,
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
protocols used
So
to control industrial equipment, which is a
okay, and
huge issue. Yeah.
yeah, it is a huge issue, and these are like used on assembly lines, things like that,
Air
that
traffic
date back.
control, nuclear plants, water plants, sewage treatment, all that stuff is OT.
Yeah.
It's all controlled by IT, and it's getting hacked by foreign nations and everything right now because it's pretty insecure. And we're just in sort of the infancy of learning how to properly secure it.
Yeah, and Modbus and all of these were protocols that were built or created, I think, late 60s, early
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah, some of them are even in the latest 80s or 90s, but almost all of them lack all modern security measures like encryption and authentication because the idea is physical presence in the building is enough authorization. Just like
Yeah,
the days of Telnet, there wasn't any internet, so you didn't worry about long-range attacks. Just access to the network itself was enough, like our satellites. Most of our satellites have no authentication and no encryption because they thought only the government would have the radio tower necessary to communicate with them, which was true until a couple decades ago. And the problem is they put them up there and you can't really update them very much, so they're just sitting ducks.
right,
True of
right,
all
right.
industrial equipment, like anything more than a couple decades old is designed without any modern security considerations. That's the way it is.
Yeah. So what I will tell you is I have worked with that equipment, and yes, they hard code in to the chips,
Yeah.
login IDs and passwords that typically are not changed, or sometimes the user IDs can't be
Well,
changed.
for Modbus, there is no password at all. It's not even in the protocol.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the way people made things all along. You make equipment, and their number one concern is to keep it running. And the
Yeah.
security consists of a lock on the door and maybe a guard to stop you from getting in there.
Yeah. Which makes perfect sense, but the world has changed.
That's the problem. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Right.
So now there's a
Yeah.
CompTIA cert, and therefore there will be textbooks and stuff, and I may update my course to use that stuff. We'll see.
Yeah. I wonder. Yeah. Okay.
There is an
It's
official U.S. government document that's very good. That's what I've been using for a textbook. I'll probably stick with that because it's free and very good. Better than the textbooks I could find. But anyway,
okay. Okay.
that's what I did with IP version 6. There was an official government document saying secure deployment of IP version 6 that was very good, absolutely good enough to use for a college textbook. And the
Oh,
same thing's true of OT. There's a very good official government document how to secure critical infrastructure, which is good enough.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it. Have you got any more?
Nope. That's it for me.
All
Let's
right.
see.
Okay, we'll have another one on Tuesday. I'll be back from layer one by then. I'm flying to LA in a couple hours here.
Oh,
I'll be
good for
there.
you.
Yeah, I'll be there at layer one and then back.
Okay. All right. You have to give us a report on that.
Oh, yes, like I just got back from Kakalaki Con in North Carolina. That was very good. I'm going to add a couple of projects to my instant response course based on a talk I saw there. So the cons are very good. I'm seeing a lot of good things happening.
I see. Okay.
All right. Well,
All
that's it.
right.
I'm
Sounds like
turning it
we're
off.
done. I'm good.
Okay.